Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, I'm going to show the process of creating a fabric book. Now, I'm not going to show you all the work that I do on each page, that process. I'll have that completed, but I'll show you how I bind the book. This is a completely different method than a previous series that I did showing a fabric book. This book is also fabric, and you can of course incorporate other materials as you like. It's just the structure of the book is my focus today. Now, all my pages, including the cover and the back of the book, are made with the same size fabric piece. In today's video, I show it as 4 by 6, and I make a template out of cardboard, just because that's simple for me. You can make it any size you want. My formation is landscape, so it goes across, but you can do it up and down if you want it to look more like a matchbook or a notepad. There are a lot of variations you can come up with. The beauty of this project is it's simple, and once you bind it, if you want to add more pages in the future, well, that's easy to do as well. So here's my process. So in a previous video, I showed how I made the book Friendly Faces. And with the pages, there's the face, and then another page with the slow stitching. I added the name tags, and you can check out that video in the link below. Now this book is complete, but if I want to add to it, I still can. I have these buttons, but they are just for show. The stitching here is what holds the book in place. Now to do this, I made one just out of felt, just so you could see the process. So here are the felt pages. Nothing is sewn on them yet. They're all just blank, but I could sew and then just combine the pages and stitch them together just to make the pages. And I, of course, could add more if I wanted. And I just bound it by stitching down here. I can always add some buttons or some accessories if I want, but that's another way to do it, and you can use felt and you get these nice, neat edges. But to make a book similar to this Friendly Faces one, I'll show you the process. For each page of the book, I have this quilted backing. Now you don't have to use quilting. You can use fabric or felt or anything you'd like. But the way I do it is for every page that I want to make, I cut a piece of that. And because I'm making so many of them, I make a little template here. And I discuss a little bit about this in that video. So now I have my template for the page size. This is 4 by 6, and this 1-inch spine won't be part of the pages. So this is the only area I have to focus on. From here, I will create a page for every page of my book with the quilted fabric or the felt or whatever I'm using. And I can just mark it down with my erasable pen, which erases with the heat of an iron. And then I'll just cut that out, and I'll do that for every page. I also do that with a backing, and here I just chose fabric muslin, just because it's plain, and again, it's the same size. And I make 2 more of these plain pages than I have for here, and that's because I want my cover to have a backing, and I want the back of my book to have a backing. But you can play around with it. There's no saying you have to do it using this method. So then the next step is to cut out all those pages and then embellish them as you like. So here are the pages of my book. Now I completed them, but I'll take you through one page showing you the process. For the cover, I have the cover cut out of that quilted fabric, and I just marked that spine. I decorated it with the theme of the book, Who is That Masked Man? And then I started my pages. So my next page is cut out from that same fabric, that quilted fabric, and I did Zorro. And for a name tag, I added his alter ego, his true name for this masked man. Now, when I showed the original video, I had hand-stitched the name tag, but I decided I wanted them to all match, so I pulled out those stitches, and I used name tags that I printed onto a piece of fabric. And I have a video showing how I did that as well, and I'll link that below. So now I have a page here and my main page. So my main page is the actual masked man that has the name tag, and then the page opposite it is my collage that I put onto that fabric piece. As you can see, you can't see the quilted piece. I embellished the fabric piece, and I put a Z here for the Zorro character. Now for my next one, I have the Dread Pirate Roberts, so I have his true name, Wesley, and then I have some buttercups, and if you're a fan of the movie, you'll get the reference. Then I have the Lone Ranger, whose name was John Reed, and I just have something indicative of this character. And then I also echoed the fabric from the original. Here's my line where I'm going to stitch the spine, just so that I know what area I have to really work with. Now here's the one I'm going to show you how I did. I have my Spider-Man, his original name, and then just something from the series that indicates it's Spider-Man in case you couldn't tell. I haven't stitched down the backing to this. I've just pinned it in place so that I can stitch it down, and I pinned down his little name tag just so I have it all together. But this is what it would look like. So I just have my Spider-Man page, and the back as well, you can see the back of the Spider-Man. For this page, it's the Darth Vader page. So I have his famous quote and some fabric that I used here, but it's not attached yet. So the first thing I have to do is stitch it together to attach it, and then I have to stitch on Peter Parker's name tag. So that's the process for creating each of these pages. The next page is Batman. He's all created. And then for the last page, I wasn't sure if I'm going to continue this book or not, so I just stitched in this blank page. So this way, when I bind my book, I can always come back, embellish this page, and then stitch it down. And likewise, I can continue adding pages to this book, Who is the Masked Man? Now, it's not relevant, the theme of the book, it's the process for binding it that it was so important, but I did think it was necessary to show the inside of the book and different ways that I embellished it. Now to backtrack, I'll show you how I started this process. So once again, I start with my sketchbook, and this is just my creative process, and I'll just go through this in a nutshell. I created the theme Masked Men, and then I just started sketching some famous masked men that I was partial to. I don't tend to like the horror flicks, so I avoided those. I wasn't really crazy about some of the comedy ones, but the ones that I did like and that really stood out to me, I created on this page. I happened to post my work on Instagram, and a viewer commented that she thought it was the Hamburglar, which was a wonderful idea. So I added the Hamburglar down here, and I decided I'd create another page of masked characters that I could add to the book. But I wasn't sure how to go about it, so I texted my family, and I have a large extended family, and I asked them for some favorite masked characters that they had. And because there's a lot of young kids in the family, this was a hit, and they gave me all their favorites. I've got to say, Spider-Man and Batman were the two favorites, but the rest of them came in for honorable mention. So I might continue with my book, adding some more of these characters. Now I want to show you how I bind the book. Now that I'm ready to bind the book, I've taken that page and stitched it down all the way around the edge, as well as adding that label. So now that I have all my pages complete, except for the ones in the back, which I'm not sure about, but I have the majority of them complete, I guess I should say. I want to line up my pages as neatly as can be, and I like to make sure that my edge is straight. So I'll just take a moment, make sure I have the edge exactly as I want it, move the pages around accordingly, and then I always take one more look at the front of the book, because if the cover's off, the rest of the book will look off. So once I have it in place, I'll hold it down, and with some clips, I'll just clip it closed. And this way it's not going to move. So now from here I decide if I want to use buttons or if I just want to make that stitched line here and here. I think I'll use some decorative buttons. They're not holding the book closed, they're really just for show. But I like to make my marks first before I start stitching the book. So I'll just take a measure and measure the entire cover, which is a little more than 4 inches. So to make, I think I'll use 2 buttons. So to use 2 buttons, I'm just going to come 1.25 inches from the top and 1.25 inches from the bottom. And that's where I'll place my buttons when I'm ready to attach them. But for now, I just want to sew my spine. So I'm going to come in here with my thread. And what I like to do again is I just like to make a neat line up and down here, and I'm just emphasizing the line that exists. And then I want to do another line over here, because that's where I'm going to actually stitch the book. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I know that that's where I want that line to go. So I'm going to come in with my thread on my needle, and any page that I want to come in underneath is fine. I want to hide that knot. So I'm going to come here underneath the book, kind of almost just a little bit of the ways up, 1 inch of the way up. And I'm going to start my first stitch, and it only goes through maybe 2 or 3 pages. Now from here, I'm going to start going through all the pages. So I'll turn my piece to the side so it's easier to see. And then I'm going to take my needle, and I have quite a long needle, and I'm just going to go straight down the book here. And I'm only going to go maybe 1/4 of an inch. It'll give me a little resistance because there are a lot of layers there. So I just take it slow and I create that stitch. I don't want to pull it too snug, just snug enough. And then I'm going to bring that stitch up again, and again I'm aiming for that line. And so it might take me a moment just to find it. And I'll make another stitch, and I can decide how far apart I want my stitches and the length of my stitches. And I'm just going to go the entire length of this spine, both on this row, and that will hold it in place. So again, because it's such a thick book, it's going to take a few moments to get those stitches lined up. I can always stitch a few pages at a time and then stitch them together, but I don't mind. I actually like the feel of stitching through all this padding. It's a very rewarding feeling. And I'll just continue. Now you can stitch directly across if you want, or you can skip that and just stitch down. What you're really doing is just reinforcing your spine here. And I like to just take a moment, make sure it's lined up properly. And after I've stitched up and down, I'll show you the results. So now I've stitched up and down my book, and it holds the spine together. Before I remove the clips, I want to show you how I end the stitch before I stitch the buttons on. It doesn't matter whether you start your thread up on the top or down on the bottom. Either way, I'm just going to stitch partly through my book. So I'll just stitch through a few pages, whatever is easy to grasp. So I'm going to bring that needle from the top, in this case, right out here, just to a few pages. So that removes the thread from the top of the book. And then from inside the pages here, I'm just going to stitch a small little stitch, just holding that page open, and then I'll just knot that. And I can do that a couple times if I'm concerned. I think one is fine. And there I have my book. Now that's all I need to do to complete the book, the spine. But because I want to put the buttons on it, that's the next step. I've already made my marks of where I want these buttons to go, and now I can decide which way I want the buttons to face. And I actually like upside down. I think this was the intended way, but I do like upside down. So I'll take my thread and just stitch them. And there I have my book. So next step is to take an iron to get rid of any of that marker. So now I'll just press the iron down onto any area where that marker remains, and I'll go through the book and do the same thing. You could always iron it before you do the buttons, but I don't have any problem with doing it just this way. And there I have my completed book. I can turn all the pages and see all the characters and all the little slow stitching that I did. The book does not open flat, it has that little bend to it. But this is one technique for binding a fabric book that's kind of easy, and it's enjoyable because you can work on a page at a time and then just set them aside, bind them together. And it's also nice because you can always add in additional pages. So that's my process for this simple fabric book. I use this binding quite a bit. I find it's very easy if I want to add to it or if I want to continue to work on the pages. Because each page is two-sided, I can always incorporate different pages into the book, and I can always add to them even after the pages are complete, if I wanted to. Now there are a lot of rough edges to the book. There are seams that are showing, sometimes the little knots might be exposed, and the edge of the book is just cut fabric, so it might fray. If you don't like that look, you can always cover over it with stitches, or even additional folded fabric and ribbon. But the idea is you have a simple process for binding a fabric book. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me today.